Welcome to Business as Unusual. This is the live stream where we explore the trends, challenges, and opportunities shaping the way leaders grow their companies. I'm Kathy Steele and the CEO of Red Caffeine and your host today. And for those of you that are joining us for the first time, Red Caffeine is a growth consultancy and we help mid-market companies scale, transform, and through transition. Our work connects brand, sales, marketing, technology, and talent into scalable revenue generation systems that help companies grow with greater clarity, consistency, and create more enterprise value. And today's topic is exciting because it kind of sits in the middle of that type of work. Because growth really doesn't happen from strategy alone. It really depends on how clearly you're articulating your value, you're building trust, uncovering buyer needs, and moving the right opportunities forward. So, most sales teams know they need a strong message, a clear process, and better tools, right, Tom?
Yeah.
But even with those pieces in place, sales conversations can still break down when the communication style does not match the person in front of you. So today we're talking about how DISC, sort of an old methodology that has a lot of value. DISC stands for dominance, steadiness, influence, and compliance. Your own self-awareness and sort of public intel can help salespeople prepare for better conversations, especially when they don't know the prospect's profile before the meeting. So we're aiming today to not put labels on buyers, but we really want to help sales teams get more ready for effectively communicating with purpose and being able to adjust on the fly when needed. So joining me today is our returning and one of our favorite guests, Tom Latourette of M3 Learning. Tom works with sales teams to improve performance through stronger communications, preparation, and accountability. Tom, welcome back to Business
Oh
as
my
Unusual.
gosh, thank you so much for having me. And this is a great conversation we're going to have. So,
I know, I'm excited. So I always like to, as you know, kick off with having you just give a brief intro. It may be some people's first time meeting you,
yeah.
and then tell us something interesting that is not on your professional bio.
So first off, Tom Latourette with Sales 3 Set. At Sales 3 Set, we work on the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set for salespeople. We're in an interesting space nowadays. There's so many tools that are available to a salesperson, and there can almost be like you're almost buried by tools, and we forget that sales is really about two humans connecting and making sure we relate with each other. One of the things we teach salespeople is people don't want to be educated, they want to be validated. And that's an interesting space of people just don't want they don't want to just say yes. They want to be guided through a process. Our founder, I met Skip Miller 20 some years ago. He used to say, people want to buy, they just don't want to be sold. And we all have this vision of what a salesperson is, the Joey Bad Jacket of the world, right? And hey, how
Yes.
you doing? How's it going? Don't you worry about it. And I think in today, it's a space of how do I earn that person's trust that I'm working with? And why I love this conversation is validation is not about my stuff. It's not about me being a great conversationalist or anything. It's how do I connect with the human and help them see me as a trusted advisor versus a pushy transactional salesperson. So that's what we do. We work with salespeople and sales teams doing that. Um, Probably the thing a lot of people don't know about me, I'm a published children's book author, which is kind
Oh,
of a lot of
yeah.
fun. Published 4 children's books, and that's kind of a passion of mine. And I'm working on 2 more coming out hopefully in the next year. And so that's just a fun way to unleash some creativity so that I don't become a serial killer.
Well, I think that is a good plan. I have actually purchased a few of your books. I remember the dentist, like I do feel like you've got a unique knack for telling stories that make children want to do things that they don't necessarily, that don't sound fun, like going to the dentist. So
And so
I
that's my,
always,
when you think about disc, like that's, I'm wired in this space of telling stories. And so, yeah, you can see this on the slide. When you think about disc, I mean, you mentioned it. Um, it's a it's a tool that's been around, Kathy, probably for 20 some years, right? I mean, it's been around a while, and most organizations, if they haven't done disc, they've done something like disc,
right,
some sort of personality testing, colors. Um, there's PI. There's probably about 10 that you could literally just talk about, and most of them are rooted in the same space of where are we more extroverted? Are we more introverted? Are we more task based or are we more socially based? And what I always found fascinating about DISC, and I'm sure you felt the same way, is it's like 20 questions. You take it in 12 to 15 minutes, and all of a sudden, this 20-page document comes out, and you're like, how did they know that that's who I am? That's crazy, right? Um, and so the conversation we're going to have today is one, I think there's most of the time when we've talked about DISC, what I've seen at least, is that we let people know how they're wired. And hey, here's how you're wired. Here's what that's going to mean in terms of how you communicate outwards. Um, what I tell salespeople today is it'd be nice if I could give the test to a prospect or a client. Hey, before we have our first meeting, would you mind? It'll only take you 12 minutes. Just fill out this test, so that'll give me an idea of how
right.
you're wired, right? But if we have an understanding of what these four quadrants look like, there are some powerful things we can do in our first meeting. We can observe body language. We can watch the way somebody writes. We can watch the way they present themselves on LinkedIn or on their website, which will give us some insight into maybe how they're wired. And so, for folks who don't know DISC, or even maybe it's been a while since you've done DISC, we'll just do a quick little, if that's okay, Kathy, we'll just do a quick little, hey,
Sure.
here's how it shows up. So, uh, folks who are extroverted and very task based, these are what they call high Ds, dominant. They want things done now. They want very little information. They want to make decisions very quickly. A lot of times, your high Ds will, yeah. What do you got now? You'll see them on the phone. You'll see them multitasking. Don't worry, I can do all this. And so that's typically how high Ds operate. How high Is, I'm a high I. I love to use my hands. I love to tell stories. Um, there's a great trainer, Pete Hinenjoso, I think is how he says it. Um, he says, you think about these visuals, high Ds, a lot of like this. High Is, it's like this. High S, one just wants to be hugged. The high S is very socially oriented, but they're introverted. They don't want to be the front and center, but they want to have a happy team. Your high S's are probably the people in your organization who put the potluck luncheons together. They make sure that everybody that we're doing group outings and things like that. And then, like Pete says, your high C's, we'll get to it at some point, but they need just a little more information. And so the high C's are the people in your organization who need the facts. They want to see the details. They want to see, and they definitely don't want to be front and center. They are introverts. Um, my wife happens, I got to make sure she's downstairs. My wife happens to be a high C, and I'm a high I. And so you can imagine, Kathy, some of those spaces where, Lucy will get very frustrated with me because I will make decisions like this. I will go, oh, yeah, that looks good. Let's buy that sink. And she will go, wait, hold on there. why don't we take a look at 4 more stores before we make a decision? And I'll be like, 4 more stores? What are you? This is the sink. We this is perfect for us. And so it's an interesting space of recognizing that it doesn't really matter that I'm a high I. We've been married for 36 years, and so the question I like to ask people is, how successful do you think I've been in 36 years of marriage of saying, hey, Lucy, you should do it this way? That doesn't really work, right? And so I think the challenge of creating really powerful relationships is understanding that here's how I'm wired. Here's how this person that I'm communicating with is wired. Let's recognize there may be some tension and some spaces there that I may have to adapt my communication style. So when I'm preparing to talk to my wife, I got to know that I better have my ducks in a row. I probably should create a few, um, maybe a nice spreadsheet would be good for her, but
Right,
she wants to know that I've thought about it, right? That I've
right.
thought through what's happening. Um, Another story, because I love to tell stories, is I met a guy. I'm in a golf league. He's telling me he just recently retired. And I said, oh, what have you been doing? And he goes, oh, my wife and I, we love to travel. And in fact, we'll take 3 4 week trips. We went to Brazil, we went to Italy. And I'm fairly curious. I said, oh, tell me, where do you like to stay? Are you a hotel guy? Do you like to go to bed and breakfasts? And he goes, oh, no, let me tell you what I love to do. What I do is I get a hotel room for the first night of the trip. And then my wife and I, we just wing it the rest of the trip. And now I'm a high I. I am extroverted, very socially oriented. There's a part of me that's like, wow, that would be a lot of fun. You could stay in the spaces that you really like. You meet people that you want to spend time with. And before you know it, I know I'm in Brazil and I was only planning to spend a day here, but I spent a week here. But
Yeah.
all I could think about, Kathy, was there is no possible way I'm going to say to my wife, hey, Lucy, we're going to Brazil for 3 weeks. And she'd be like, oh, that's great. Where are we staying? You know what? We'll figure it out when we get there.
Yeah.
That's not going to
That
be
gives me anxiety just thinking about it too. I know
right.
my husband's definitely had that. Let's do like things on a whim. And I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no, no, no. Like we can have a whim of flexibility when we're in a
Yeah.
city, but not, where we're going to be sleeping at night. So I
And
get that.
so recognizing that that's the way that other person is wired, I, I I will have to create some structure, some framework, some templates inside of that conversation so that we can maybe create a place where we can go on a whim, but maybe there's options that have to be thought about. Does that all make sense,
Yeah,
right?
it totally makes sense. And I think, so it was really interesting when, I've taken the DISC assessment, I think a
Mhm.
couple of times, but I hadn't taken it in a while and I hadn't really revisited my profile. Let's talk a little bit about
Yeah.
like the starting point, actually knowing where you fall in this dynamic. What is your DISC profile? So we've got my DISC profile sort of ready present. So, you know, what are some of the kind of most important things to know about your own personal personality in order to help you prepare for being in front of somebody that is either like you or
Yeah.
completely different from you?
Yeah. So I think what's interesting, what I love about just you take the disc and it gives you some insight into where you are and how strongly you are in those quadrants. And there's 2 spaces. There's a natural style and an adapted style. And so you start in your natural style. And so for you, you are a natural high D and a high I. So one, you're being in an extroverted position where you're front and center, you feel comfortable in that space. You feel comfortable in networking situations. You probably feel comfortable. I mean that would make sense for you being leader of an organization, a CEO. I've seen you speak before. And so these are spaces where you feel comfortable and you feel very natural. Now, just because you're not strong there naturally doesn't mean you can't do it.
Right.
It just means that people who are not wired this way, when they do it, they have to prepare more.
Right.
They have to mentally psych themselves up a little bit more. People like you and I, you can throw us into a room full of strangers and we're going to walk out of there with the names of 20 people. We're going to have friends. We're going to have a bunch of glasses of wine with people we didn't know before. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would. Yes, I am.
How we're naturally wired. Now, what what takes energy away from us, at least I know for me, I'm a high I, much like you. When I have to work for 2 or 3 hours on a spreadsheet, that takes energy away from me.
Yeah.
I need to talk to a human. I need to do something. I need to pick up the phone. What I find when I'm working on spreadsheets and things like that is I can only do it in small bursts. And all of a sudden I lose attention. And so I have to, and I don't know if you're like that, but it's some good insight to say these are the spaces that I'm naturally good at. I've got energy inside of it. So for you, you're a high I and a high D naturally. Your adapted style is interesting because as a leader of an organization, you probably have tried to tamp down your high I-ness and you're focusing more on results and trying to move things. And so typically what you see sometimes is the adapted style is how we are kind of adapting in a lot of times you'll see it even in a short term space of this is for this month I'm working with a company that needs me to be like this, and most of us can make that we can adapt a little bit if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So first off, the biggest question is, did the results feel like you, like when you saw those results were you like, oh yeah, that makes sense?
Yeah, they not only felt like me, I had to sort of pause because I wanted to answer questions differently because I didn't want to really tell the truth about,
Right.
I just felt like I was failing a test or something like that. But it was really interesting just to know I'm like, oh, this is definitely a me. And yes, the results were spot on. I do wonder about the adaptive style a little bit in terms of the influence. I think that depends on
Yeah.
what situation I'm in, but I wonder, and in terms of like it in a sales context, not knowing your own profile, what are some of the blind spots you'd have, or what are some of the friction points you'd have in being with somebody that has a much different profile, uh, from
That's
your
great.
own?
It's a really great way to think about it. So, for example, I worked with Skip Miller. So, Skip was our founder. He died 2 years ago, but I worked with him for about 20 years. He was a high D. You have very high D tendencies, right? As a high I, I would send Skip a weekly message. Skip, I'm so excited. I'm going to be on this live stream, the business as unusual, Kathy, and then I'm going to be doing this, and then I'm going to be doing this, and I've got this going on, and I've got this going on, and oh my gosh, the air quality's horrible outside. The sun's out, but blah blah blah. I'm hoping to do this weekend. And Skip would reply on text with one consonant, a K. Now, the first few times he did that, I was like, oh my God, he must be angry with me. He must be mad at me. But the reality was that Skip was sitting on the other end of that text going, why is he telling me all this information? I don't need this information. And I'm not going to reply back to him with a lot of information. I'm just going to give him 2 or 3 bullet points, right? Now, on the surface, you could think that somebody who operates like that doesn't care about all the other stuff, but that's just not what they led with. Skip would go down that path after he got to know you. And then you'd have conversations about your family and about things like that. So that's a high D. Now, a high C, let's say I was communicating with a high C. they might look at me with suspicion in a space of, why is this guy giving us all the information? I mean, doing a lot of talking, but he's not really giving me the facts that I need. He's not giving me the statistics. He's not giving me the spreadsheet. He's not giving me the thing. And I have to recognize that my wiring is a strength. But for many people, 75% of the world, they may view my wiring as, they may come to me with a little bit of trepidation and maybe some suspicion, maybe like, why is he doing this? If I want to be successful in sales, if I want to be successful creating a relationship, I better lead with curiosity to try to find out how that other person is wired so I can match their energy. I can try to mirror them. Now, I want to be real specific. That's not me being manipulative. It's me trying to create a relationship. And I'm going to go back to, people don't want to be educated, they want to be validated. That's one of the statements we make when we're teaching salespeople is, people don't want to be pushed into a sales. They want to be led. They want to work with a trusted advisor. And so if I want to be seen as a trusted advisor, I have to figure out a way to kind of match your energy. Now,
Yeah.
how do you do that without having somebody take a test? Right? Now,
Right. Right.
I would say, Kathy, is I think you can do it fairly easily just by being open, being aware. So if you think about body language, written language, and verbal. So let's say I asked you, "Hey, how was your weekend?" How would a high D respond to "How was your weekend"?
Probably a little bit shorter explanations because they kind of want to get to it. They're
Yeah,
here for
yeah,
this.
I don't even remember what I did this weekend, but what are you here for again? Boom. They may
Right.
not even talk about the weekend. A high I, buckle up, buddy. They're going to talk for 20
Oh,
minutes, right? Um,
yeah. Sometimes I have to force myself, like, with to be patient
yeah.
with
How do you
the.
think a high S is going to answer? So they're socially based, but they're introverted. How will a high S answer? What types of things might you hear a high S say? How was your weekend?
Yeah, I think they're going to talk a little bit about more like their family dynamic, or things that are a little bit more closer to to their personal world.
You'll hear things like, we did this, we did
Yeah.
this. A high C will tell you kind of, I mean, they might not look you in the eye while they're telling you this, but they'll probably tell you the process of what they did.
Mm,
On
yes.
Friday afternoon, we did this. Then we went from there to here. And then Saturday morning, we did this. And so even just something as simple as, how was your weekend? You can get some insight into how that other person is wired.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of doing pre-meeting research. When you take a look at how somebody writes, how they represent themselves on LinkedIn, they will tell you, they'll give you some insight into how they might be wired. Does that make sense?
Yes, I mean, I think I've even gotten that feedback where, somebody told me, this is going back years, but they're like, you're sort of curt, because I would write these very short emails because when I would get a really long email, I'd just close it. I'm like, I don't want to process all this right now. I've got to come back to it. I am much better with that kind of short, to the point communication style. So I didn't realize that I was coming across as non-friendly and curt because my emails are very
We
short.
were doing a program with a customer service team, and one of the mechanical reps was a high C.
Mm,
And so, as a high C, all about the facts and the figures. And so he put this 10-page specification booklet program together. And he said, I have salespeople in my organization. I give them this specification book, and they don't even reference it. I don't even know if they read it. He goes, and
right.
I'll tell you, that's offensive to me. I spent a lot of time on that book. I spent a lot. And so what's interesting is, now, as a high I don't I don't need that data. Or, I mean, I need it, but I don't
Somebody to
love
put it
it.
in like
I,
short
if you
snippets.
had given it to me in a paragraph, that'd be much better, because I'm not going to read the 10 pages. But I will tell you, if all of a sudden somebody says, you not reading that is actually making me feel like you don't respect me, I'm
Yeah.
going to work harder at actually reading that or referencing some things that I read in that and acknowledging the work that was put in there. Now, as a high I, I'm not doing that on purpose to be disrespectful initially. But if I don't understand that's what a high C needs, I might disrespect my teammate, my client, my partner all the time without even recognizing I'm doing it, right?
Yeah,
So,
Tom, I'm curious, what other, because I know, like, I feel like we can get so much more information about who we may be in front of. There might be some different single signals we're seeing about what the corporation values and where their mind is at. So you can do so much
yeah.
about
Hmm.
being prepared. I mean, I wonder, number one, are sales teams doing that preparation? And number two, like, what other things could you look at to really understand not just what the company is doing, but really what the key people that are going to be in the room with you are valuing and their personality?
We've had some great success. I know you're using AI and you're starting to get really good at it. What's been interesting for us is we've actually created some prompts, and I'd be more than happy to send anybody these prompts, but we're including DISC in the prompt word. We're
Yeah,
saying, hey, these are the DISC criteria that we're looking for. Here's some information. Please go to this website, go to the LinkedIn page. Give me some thought process on how this person might be wired based on what you're reading, what you're seeing, what information they're putting out there, and what might be some of the things that are really important to them. So,
yeah,
just doing some of that research work alone is really powerful. The other, and this is an old style story, but our president, Christine Rogers, who was in one of your, I think we
yeah,
spoke to her about 6 months ago,
yes,
um, she
fantastic.
runs a rescue service for boxer dogs, and she's been doing this for 20 some years. If you go to her LinkedIn page, it's like the second or third thing on her LinkedIn page. And Christine runs the gamut between a D and a C. She's very tasked. She's really good. And one of the things that she said was, in 20 years, only two salespeople have ever referenced the fact that I put that on. And she goes, and I took both of those meetings. I think we honor people by doing research and by acknowledging what they're putting out into the world, especially on LinkedIn, Instagram, I mean, if I'm going to spend time putting it in my profile, we should mention that. We should mention the
Right.
fact that we saw it and we noticed it. I read your about. If you ever, when you look on LinkedIn, there's that about me section.
Yes.
People will tell you what's important to them. And I'll bet you, Kathy, what percentage of salespeople you think read that before a first meeting?
I think it's probably pretty low.
Probably less
30.
than, probably, I was going to say less than probably 25, 30%. Now, think about how strong that would make you look in a first meeting. I looked at your LinkedIn page. You said these things were really important. Tell me more about that, Kathy. That's really interesting.
I mean, we just recently hired a candidate that told her bio in the way we formulate our bios online. And I mean,
Yeah.
instantaneously rose to
Yeah.
the top of the interview process. So there's just so many things around being resonant with the person you're in front of. Sales is such an important aspect, but there's so many, ways to use DISC and really thinking about the person that you're with.
So key, definitely, we all know the first stage of a sales process is to target and do some research. And
Right.
so I think you honor people, you validate people by doing research. Don't just wing it. Don't just show up. Do a do some research. And you don't have to do, you don't have to do 5 hours of research, but just get consistent and do probably try to look for two or three things that I can bring up in a meeting that will show somebody that I actually took a look at what's going on. Take a look at their website, their LinkedIn page. Take maybe Google. What I'm a big fan of, Google or AI. What's the big? I'm getting ready. Let's say we're getting ready to call a CFO. and they're in the pick an industry. What's an industry that you guys work a lot in?
Manufacturing or,
So
yeah,
getting ready to
construction.
call a CFO of a manufacturing industry in the metalworking space. Boom.
Right,
What are the biggest challenges? What are the biggest risks that the metalworking space is going through in today's world? And if I was the CFO, what are my top 5 challenges? You would you agree that even if you didn't, AI would give that to you. AI
right,
would give you 20 pages, but Google would give you a nice 3 or 4 paragraphs, right? That alone comes in and says, I did a little bit of research. I saw that these are the top 4 or 5 issues that you might be worried about. Is the research telling me what you're worried about today? Tell me a little bit about what's going on in your world. What's causing this conversation to happen? What do you need to accomplish? Walking in, even if I didn't do the research, walking in a space of curiosity I'm gonna hear some things that if I kind of understand the disc, I can go, oh, this person's going to need me to give them facts. This
right.
person's need a story or two. This person's going to need a bullet point, and this person's going to need a hug. That's does that make sense?
It absolutely does. So, all right. Well, I think this is really kind of set the stage. We want to do, kind of put this into practice and in a little bit of a role play setup. Is there anything we should think about before we jump into the role play?
Let's just quickly touch on this slide, only because I think that where disc is also really important is in the work we do with our teams.
Yeah.
And so this is an example of a team work that we did with Disc. And today sales is not a solitary business. You will not be successful in an organization if you have a lone wolf that's out there just doing their own thing. Salespeople have to rely on support people inside their organizations. And many times their support people are wired differently than they are. And so
Right.
that space of understanding where my teammates are wired is going to make a huge difference in my ability to communicate. And the other thing I would say is, if I'm not a high C, maybe I bring a high C and I'm getting ready to meet with a CFO. Why don't I bring a high C with me, and show the fact that I'm a high I. We've got high C's that are speaking your language in the organization, and that's
Right.
why you should do business with us because we understand you on multiple levels. Make sense?
Absolutely. I love that. I think that makes, because team either tends to be probably in a D or I
Yeah,
personality, and then even maybe bringing in like a subject matter expert that
yeah.
brings,
Mhm.
total competence in your product line or your service line, and they're going to have a much more measured presentation style, but they're going to be able to get to the facts and really balance out the enthusiasm of somebody that's a D or an I. Then,
And
uh,
I don't have to be the expert. I can just
right,
quarterback. I can quarterback that conversation, and I know it needs some C right now. It needs a little bit of D. And so you're bringing the right people in who know they can do that really well. And now all of a sudden, my team is resonating. We're aligning with the client in a way. We're aligning with the customer in a way that if I'm just talking at you, it's not going to work that way.
right, and it also gives you this natural opportunity to
Yeah.
like showcase your team's capabilities. I feel like you hear that a lot in sales situations where like, am I going to ever see you again after
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
close? So you want to make sure that there's like a natural introduction of other people that they're going to be working with on the team, and it shows a lot of breadth of
Yeah. Mhm.
expertise. You're able to bring in not just different personality types, but different skill sets into a room.
We've talked about this before in another program, the above the line and below the line.
Yeah,
And I think it's above the line people love talking to other above the line people. Below the line people love talking to other below the line people. And your ability to put those people in connection. Oh, you should meet my boss. You should meet
right.
our CFO. We need to go through the law department. You should talk to our law. Let my let my law people talk to, let my marketing person talk to your marketing person.
Right.
Space of coordinating that, like you just said, Kathy, makes you look like a company that I want to do business with, because I'm not just dealing with one person. I'm dealing with multiple people that I know are going to have my best interest in mind, you know?
It's so value add.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. So, let's say we're getting ready to, so Kathy, why don't you pick an account, maybe pick somebody that you might be challenged calling on.
yeah, I think the scenarios that we wanted to kind of talk about, I felt like it was easiest to bring it from the red caffeine lens.
Perfect.
And our clients are facing some really significant challenges typically. And so let's say we're getting, as we said, we work a lot in manufacturing. We're getting in front of a mid-market manufacturing. They're considering growth through acquisition. They're looking at bringing like a smaller company into their ecosystem to expand their capabilities and enter like a high growth market. So real scalable
Yeah.
opportunity.
Mhm.
Everybody's aligned that the acquisition makes a lot of strategic sense. They're going to be getting technical expertise. They'll be getting access to customers and additional production capabilities. But there's some real questions. So the leadership team is not really sure that these brands align or how to align these brands in the marketplace, that now they're going to have to combine efforts of their individualized sales team. So how do they sell
Yeah.
in this and that, or how do they sell in both or give optionality? And then is there really a plan to integrate these businesses that's going to create this optimized after purchase asset that they think is possible? So I'd like to look at it as getting in front of two different buyer types. One would be the CFO. We talked a little bit
Yeah.
about
Mhm.
how a CFO might approach this, and one would be like a chief revenue officer.
Love it. Yeah.
And I think it's going to really be such a dynamic change. So, um, kind of going back to the start, like what would be some of the things we'd want to research in advance of getting in front of either one of those buyers?
So probably the first thing, and this would be the space that we try to start almost every single sales conversation. What's the problem, and what's the size of that problem?
Yes.
I really want to challenge salespeople, sales organizations, when I'm getting ready to talk to a customer. What is the problem that they're having, and what's the size of that problem? Now, and the problem is not, oh, I need better marketing.
Right. Right.
That's
Yes.
not it. And why do you need better marketing? What's the 3-year goal, the 5-year goal? And how's that going? What are the challenges you're having? Now, as we know in a lot of manufacturing organizations, um, maybe we're talking to somebody who's at the tail end of their career, and they're getting ready to hand this, or they're trying to create a business that they can sell powerfully, because they want to retire. That's a different conversation. That's a different problem than somebody who's in the beginning. Oh my gosh, I just took this business over. I just bought this business, and I want a 5x it. I want a 10x it. I'm looking to really grow this. And here's 5 markets that we're trying to get in front of. Two completely different problems. Would you agree?
Right.
And so the first thing is, are we good? Can I articulate what's the problem and what's the size of that problem? So, if I'm going in to do research, I've got to try to do is, I got to see what they're putting out into the world, and but then I also have to see what other organizations like theirs, what problems are they trying to fix, what problems are they trying to solve, and then I need to have a meeting to determine what is that problem and how are they prioritizing those problems. Does that
Right.
all make sense?
So yeah, like thinking about like what signals you could get from the marketplace research about what a CFO might want to be
Yeah.
hearing early, or what the CRO would
Yeah.
want to understand before they select their partner to help them with this
So
acquisition
I'm a big
integration.
fan of if you do the research, your first discovery call needs to sound something like this. Hey, Kathy, we work with lots of CFOs like you in mid market manufacturing firms that are telling us these are the top three, top five problems that they're having. Which one of those problems are you trying to fix, or which ones of those problems are you most worried about? And how's that going? Where are you on this on a scale of 1 to 10? One, maybe I'm at a 3 or a 4, but I need to get to a 7 or an 8. One of the things we talk about is, can you find the gap on those problems? I'm here. I need to get here. The great thing about asking a gap question is, Kathy, it doesn't matter if you're at a 2 wanting to get to a 6, or if you're at an 8 wanting to get to a 9 or a 10, or if I'm at a 9.5 and I need to stay at 9.5. There's a gap on any
Right.
of those issues, right? Our job is to find the gap. So first, we want to ask problem-based questions. What's bringing you into this conversation? What's causing you to have this conversation? I'm here. I need to get here. Okay. So find that. And when we go back to DISC, it's a space of, now I'm watching to see, how are my answers, or how is my conversation going to pull out or give information based on how you would like to receive that. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. So if I'm gonna, can I
Yeah.
lean into all right, I'm in front of the CFO, and I'm just gonna kind of give a spiel that I prepared. So, hello, Tom. Thanks for making time for me today. I know this acquisition represents a really meaningful growth opportunity, but also it's a considerable investment. Before we talk about marketing, I really want to understand the business case behind this deal. So, from what I can see publicly, the acquisition is going to expand your capabilities and open new market opportunities. But the question is whether the combined company will have the positioning, sales process, tools, customer communication strategy needed to turn that added capability into revenue. At Red Caffeine, we help mid market companies build a go to market plan that really connects all of those pieces and parts into a measurable growth system. So, in an acquisition scenario like this, our role is to make sure that the market understands the value of the combined offering, and that your sales and leadership team have the strategy, tools, and messaging to make that investment pay off. We also work with your internal team. This is embraced across your entire organization, as well as the bolt-on business you're bringing into the fold. So what I would like to understand today is where you see the biggest risk in translating this acquisition into actual revenue growth.
So
So what worked?
love it. So first off, um, what's the objective of a first date? If you were to think about a first date, I'm meeting somebody for the first time. What would you say are the two objectives of a first date?
I guess to me it would be like getting to know them and
Yeah.
really understanding, who they are, what's important to them,
Yeah.
what they like to do, that kind of
Love
thing.
it. Yeah, so that's one objective. I want to get to know you. And what's the second objective? And why do you need to know that?
I want you to kind of get to know me a little bit and better understand if we're really a chemistry fit or we're a match.
Because we want to determine if a second date makes sense. Is that
Correct.
fair?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now I'll hear a lot of people say, when I ask that question, what are the two objectives? They'll say, well, you want to get to a second date. And I'll be like, no, 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 no. You want to see if a second date makes sense for both of you, right?
Right.
Okay. So if the first date is about me uncovering things about you so that I can determine if a second date makes sense, what I would say is, you want to minimize your second date stuff. So anything you say about Red Caffeine is second date stuff.
Okay.
Everything that's about you and the problems you're encountering and what you're going. So your leading was fantastic. Your lead is fantastic. And what I would say is, drop off the need to educate on Red Caffeine. You'll have time to do that. If we get the other person to talk, these are the problems we're seeing. These are the things that when we're working with people, companies just like yours, CFOs just like you, they're telling us boom, boom, and boom. Which one of those problems is causing you the most pain and challenge? They will talk your ear off. I was just at a I was just at a wedding in Aspen. A friend of mine, his son got married, and I love asking questions when I meet people. I'm amazed at how few questions they will ask me when they are
I
talking about. And but what ends up happening is they all walk away from that conversation and go, "Wow, that Tom is a great conversationalist." And I'll be like, "I didn't talk at all. You
Okay,
did all the
that is a
talking."
little hard to believe, Tom, but
Right?
okay.
But you know what I mean though. It's like this interesting space. Oh my God, tell me more about that. Tell me more. And all of a sudden people open up.
Yeah.
They share in a way that if I talk at you, they won't. Now, here's what I would tell you. All the stuff you told me about red caffeine is important, but it's probably second date stuff or maybe later in that conversation. The best sales call you can have is when somebody says, "Well, we need to fix this, we need to solve this." And you go, "Yeah, that's what we do. That's exactly
Yeah.
what we do at Red Caffeine. You don't need to know how the sausage is made. We know we can do it." And you wouldn't be having this meeting with me if you didn't think that, right? Here's what I want you to recognize. The quality of your questions on the front end tell me how powerful your organization is, how well you understand my problem, how well you understand. You don't have to tell me that. Just asking me about my problems are going to go, wow, they really get me. They understand me in
Mm.
a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so were there certain things that I should be talking about in that context earlier because I'm sitting in front of the CFO in this
So, what
situation?
I would say is give me one of the statements you make about red caffeine, just one of them.
Uh, sure. At Red Caffeine, we help mid-market companies build go-to-market plans that connect brand, sales, marketing, technology,
Okay.
and
So,
talent
instead
around.
of making that a statement, turn it into a question. Hey, are you guys, I'd love to know how are you guys turning this into that? How are you guys managing this and that? Does that you see the tweak there?
Yes, I
So
do.
instead of making a statement at Red Caffeine, we do this. At Red Caffeine, we help CFOs answer the question they're asking is, how can I solve this? How can I fix this? Do you see how that's kind of
Right.
it's a slight twist, but it gets me in the validation space of, oh, this is a problem I'm having. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, all right, well, let's think about
Yeah.
this from a different seat at the table in the decision-making process. Now I'm in front of a chief
Uh-huh.
revenue
Yeah.
officer.
Mhm.
You've already heard the spiel. Again, like, what would you do differently in front of that
So
person?
if you were to think about the chief revenue officer, what do you think? What would you say are the top two or three issues a CRO is having? My
You know,
pipeline, how big my pipeline is, the speed of the pipeline, and how do I get my team? Probably in a lot of manufacturing organizations, we've been doing it this way for a long time. And how do I get my team to embrace new technology? How do I get them to do this? How do I get them to do that? Kathy, are those problems you guys are struggling with?
yeah,
And then
exactly.
you just and then and this is where it's hard for me a lot because I'm a high I because I do I have to sometimes take my fingernails and drive it into my thighs and go, tell me, how are you guys doing that? What are the issues you're having? How Tell me about your pipeline. Are you happy with the size of your pipeline? On a scale of 1 to 10, if you were to say, this is I find in sales it's interesting. Kathy, what percentage of companies nationwide hit their goal every year?
Uh,
Yeah,
35%.
I think the number is about 40, 41, which is actually better. But what percentage of companies start off January 1st with a goal that's either as big as last year or higher than last year?
Most start out with
Probably
some,
100%. We
yeah,
are walking into the year knowing we're probably not going to, 50% of the time, we're not going to hit our goals.
right.
So if I'm talking to a CRO, how's that going? How, are you guys hitting your goal? Where are you today? Where are you? What's the biggest risk? What's the challenge? Well, I'm at a 4. I have to be at an 8. I'm worried about oh my god, I don't know where I'm going to get I don't know where I'm going to get these numbers. And so getting me, if I was the CRO, getting me to talk about where my pipeline is, what's the speed of my pipeline, how is my sales team adapting to that? Those are all spaces you can help me with, correct?
Yeah. And I feel like, the one thing that I would expect from a CRO is maybe more of a sense of urgency. I feel like even when you're killing it,
Yeah.
it's still, you always want more
Yeah.
as a sales leader. It
Yeah.
is all
You want to hit
because
it now. Yeah.
it's like the peaks and valleys. So you really, so I feel like that buyer may have more of a sense of urgency than a CFO that's taking a much more measured approach to
Yeah.
decision making.
Skip used to say there are certain people who think with a calendar, and then there's some people who think with a watch in a business. And a lot of times the CRO is the one who's like, "What are we waiting for? This is
Right.
we got to. I don't have time to wait, right?" And so that's why I like when I'm in discovery questions about where you shorten the time frame. How's your third quarter doing? What do you guys have to do this month? What do you have to do this quarter to make sure you hit your goal for the year? That space of actually kind of shortening your time zone a little bit, creating some sense of urgency. And again, if I see that you're a D or you're even a C is going to be about tactics, right? That space of how do I kind of force this question? Definitely because you're a high D, you
Yes.
are thinking about you're thinking about time, right? Your challenge when you're talking to a high C, maybe even a high S, is if you go too fast, especially for a high S. If you go too fast for a high S, they are going to put some they're going to put some walls up. And in fact, I'm sure you work with some we work with a lot of leaders who are like, well, I need to do this, and then I'm going to need to do this, and then I'm going to need to do this, and then I'm going to need to do this, and we have to help them see that they're running out of time. And that's
Right.
the challenge, right? Well, aren't you worried about, I mean, if you do this and this, that's going to take you 6 months. I thought you said you needed to have this solved by this date. So
Yeah.
having a date conversation in your discovery, finding out what are the dates that they need to hit, what are the reasons for that, allows you to then put urgency into the conversation.
Yeah. And I'm always also thinking about my own apps in the equation too. Like, how can we really scale up quick
Yeah.
enough to meet those types of aggressive deadlines and do a good job. So I think it's balancing like what you've got behind you and then what that is in front of you because
And I would say if you're not having that time conversation, we call it an I date, an implementation date, a date that
mm,
you need to have this. Many times, once I uncover this, it allows me the ability to go, well, as a trusted advisor, in order for you to hit this date, you needed to make this decision 2 weeks ago.
right,
That space of
right, yeah,
you have
that's
run
usually
out
the
of
case.
time. You're running out of time. And that allows me to be seen not as a pushy transactional salesperson, but it allows me to be seen as somebody who is educating you through what you have to do to get to this point.
Yeah. So, Tom, I know the hour is slipping away. I think it'd be great to just kind of wrap this up. If we've got leaders of organizations or leaders of sales organizations attending today, what if would be one idea that they should take away from today's conversation?
Um, Probably the best thing for me is I want to attach to that time element. What we see happens so many times. There's a riddle we like to give. Trying to get across this bridge. In order to get across the bridge, I want to average 60 miles an hour. I'm halfway across the bridge. I've been averaging 30 miles an hour. What speed do I need to go at to hit this goal? Now, when we ask that question, people go, oh, probably 90 miles an hour, 120 miles an hour. But if you do the math, the reality is if I want to get across this 60-mile bridge and I want to average 60 miles an hour, that means I'm going to be driving for an hour. If I'm halfway across the bridge and I've been averaging 30 miles an hour, I've been driving for an hour. I've run out of time.
Right.
The problem, to your point, is when I'm in above the line conversations at sea level, we have to make that conversation about time and urgency and energy. That's how we make decisions. And too many times we think time is this unlimited resource we have, but the reality is we're running out of time. And you waiting 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months to make this decision, you're not going to hit this goal. I thought you told me this was where you needed to be.
Right.
And so doing a much better job of capturing this I date, the end date is critical for us to be seen as a trusted advisor who is helping them get here instead of a pushy transactional salesperson who's just selling stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that, what's so interesting is how we all think of the back half of the year as 6 months, and just that, it is not 6 months
No.
of time. It's a much shorter timeline because you have the holidays and there's just so many other considerations to kind of back out of that half year mode. So you really, we always try and be ahead by the first 6 months of the year so that we, can meet the reality of our objectives, not, be at a point in time, just in the middle, because we don't have as much time in the back half of the
And
year.
then to wrap up a bow, we started with a disc conversation, and every one of those quadrants on the disc is going to look at time differently. And so
Right.
we have to understand that just because we look at time a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that the other person is. So we're going to have conversations to help them see the urgency and the way they need to see it.
Yeah.
So
Well, Tom, incredible stuff.
this
I,
was a
I
lot
mean,
of fun. Thank
again,
you.
just really love taking I'm so glad you suggested this topic and I know you're a certified disc implementer, right? So, it really was really fun to re-examine my personality type, think about it in the context of not only my role in sales or my role in networking, but also my role as a leader. I think it's just a really valuable like self-assessment that you can have in your back pocket. Um, if I know we've got sort of your contact details, so if somebody wants to get a hold of Tom and talk to him more about their sales challenges or about DISC specifically, please connect with him. Let him know that you saw him on Business as Unusual, and just put that in the subject line when you reach out, and he'll
And
know.
at a least case scenario, make sure we connect on LinkedIn. We share a lot of data and we share a lot of content on LinkedIn too. So
You sure do. You sure do. So I also want to always acknowledge our sponsors. So M3 is a valued partner to us, and we also want to highlight HR Source. They're the go-to resource for employers, really helping organizations lead with confidence through HR guidance, compensation, survey data, and fractional HR expertise. So the one value I think both HR Source and M3 Learning bring is that our conversations on business as unusual really try and target both the people side of businesses and the revenue side of business. And both these partners really bring a lot of value to the equation there. So, next up, I'm also excited about this conversation. I'm going to be joined by a few of my other favorite people. Some of our red caffeiners, our own Amy Anderson, Christiana Henry, and Kelly Sierra will be joining me in August. And the cool thing about listening to this session will be the fact that every day these three leaders get to work alongside clients that serve an array of industries. They're helping leaders and leadership teams really decide where to grow their business, what capabilities to build inside their business, where to invest, and really truly how to prepare for what's coming next. So a lot of organizations come to us with a aspiration and a vision that is fairly clear, but they don't always know how to deliver that path forward. So we're going to take a peek behind the scenes at Red Caffeine, and our team's going to share what they're seeing across a number of growth focused companies, how leaders are prioritizing the many aspects of the business that they're trying to build, and how to become that business that they are currently, and how to scale to that next phase of business growth. And so, with that, I want to thank you again, Tom, for sharing your perspective and helping us really better understand the DISC and how it fits in to, improving the experience when you're in front of a opportunity, communicate better. I obviously, really the big takeaway for me is salespeople have a lot of opportunity to do a lot of advanced preparation and getting in front of organizations, and really understanding their business, but also, the potential of better understanding who that person is that is going to be buying from you and making that decision. So if today's discussion made you think differently about how your sales team prepares, communicates, or adapts to different buyers, that is what we were striving for. But if you have any questions about today's topic or anything related to sales, please feel free to reach out to Tom or myself. As we mentioned, we're both very active on LinkedIn, and we'd love to have a follow-on conversation about this topic or anything else. And then until next time, let's all keep
Pleasure.
challenging what's possible and building the kind of business people want to work with and work for. Thank you again, Tom.
Thanks, Kathy. This was great. Appreciate